All right, welcome everybody to the NYC Geek Society Ghostbusters review and discussion here. It's not just a review, because first thing I have to tell you here is that I didn't see the movie, and I'm not going to. I'm boycotting the movie. It's one of a list of movies that I'm boycotting this year, so I refuse to give them my money. If I ever see it someday, it'll only be on the secondary market, so no money is made from my participation. John here, on the other hand, has seen the movie. So what we're going to talk about here is Star Trek Beyond, right?
No. I was going to possibly see Star Trek Beyond as well, but I didn't get a chance to see it.
So what did you see today?
Just Ghostbusters.
All right, so you just saw Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
That's what we're going to talk about then. Ghostbusters. So no Star Trek Beyond.
No.
I can hate on that another time.
Yeah.
All right, so we're just talking
Maybe
about
next week.
All right, so we'll talk about Ghostbusters here. Like I said, there's a whole list of movies that I'm boycotting this year for various reasons, and we'll go into those reasons quickly. But John doesn't feel the same way that I do.
Right. Or slightly different about certain.
Slightly different, but from my point of view, if you support junk, they're going to keep giving you junk. And the only way you're going to stop them from giving you junk is if they don't make any money doing it. So the whole sing for myself philosophy is self-defeating. That's like saying, oh, if I fire a gun into my head, it's going to go blow my brains out. Is that what you're telling me? I don't believe you. I have to see for myself. That's what everybody's doing by supporting junk. At least that's what I think.
Eloquently said.
So, all right. So this is going to be filled with spoilers, just so you know. I'm just going to ask him questions because I don't care about spoilers for this movie, since I may never even see it. So keep in mind this is going to be spoiler filled. And if you care about that, turn this off now, and then see this after you watch the movie. If you're never going to see the movie like me, then it shouldn't matter, right? So, all right. So, John, what did you think?
First of all, I'd like to excuse my sweaty T-shirt because it's about almost 100 degrees outside.
Yes.
And we always have to turn off the fan when we're doing videos. So
Yes, and
we
can't always look as fresh as we can.
But yeah, right off the bat, I like it. I actually like the movie. I'm as surprised as you are, actually, because I didn't think I would. But I do. I actually like the movie. There's a bunch of thoughts that I've had in my head, but what's important about Ghostbusters to me, what was the most important thing to me, was that the characters, right? That you feel this bond between them. And even though in the original it's not really explained that much, you get the feeling that Venkman and Dan Aykroyd's character, I'm blanking, right? That they've worked together for years and they've known each other for years. You don't really know how far back it goes. But you get this feeling that they're all friends. And I have a soft spot for stories about friendship. I'm a sap, what can I say?
Okay.
And this really actually focuses on that a lot more. Because if someone asked me, what is the original Ghostbusters about? Besides the obvious that it's about ghosts and people busting them, I would say it's mostly a story about a startup, right? It's a story about kind of underdogs starting their own company and people not trusting in them and then eventually winning over the city. With me on this movie, if someone asked me what this movie is about, I would say it's about believing in your friends, which is a lot more personal of a story, I think. That the movie kind of starts out with, I'm not going to remember all the characters' names, but I'll remember the actors. Melissa McCarthy's character, McCarthy's character, sorry. She and Kristen Wiig's character wrote a book about ghosts together. Right. And you find out that Kristen Wiig eventually kind of abandoned her because she wants to become an established science professor, and people were laughing at them. And so she's kind of left that world. And then obviously once things start happening, she kind of gets back in on it, and you kind of she realizes she should have stuck by her friend, and that's really what the movie seems to be about. Which again is a soft spot for me, and I enjoy that. When it comes to the comedy, I actually found myself laughing a lot, and most of the jokes I felt landed, or most of the comedy landed for me. But the stuff that didn't land for me is more a critique about, I think, modern comedy than it is about this movie itself. Where basically the problem that I have with some modern comedies is when characters say things to each other, or say things in general, that nobody would actually say, but they're just saying it because it's funny. So, for example, there's a scene in the movie where some secondary characters are in a restaurant. It's the mayor and like his assistant, and they're talking about, like the mayor's assistant says it's like a code red, and he goes, "Oh, what? I got food in my teeth," and she says, "No, that's a code green." And it's like nobody would actually talk like that, and it's obviously just for laughs, and it doesn't make sense. Whereas the original Ghostbusters didn't really have that. We've talked about it off camera before. What's appealing about the original Ghostbusters, and really what I think about a lot of comedies of that time, is that it was more about these are funny characters.
Right, but I wouldn't necessarily call Ghostbusters a comedy, the first film.
Right.
It wasn't necessarily a comedy. It was very funny.
Right.
But it was a sci-fi adventure.
So that's the thing. This is more of a comedy, but it still has that sci-fi adventure feel. And by the end of the movie especially, I really care about these characters. I found myself rooting for them. And you get that distinct sense that they're friends, and they've earned that in the movie. Now, for me also, the highlight of the movie for me was Kate McKinnon. She was hilarious to me, and because of the reason what we just stated before, that from the beginning she's established as a strange character. And so therefore everything that she says and does makes perfect sense for that character to do.
Right, but the criticism from the early screenings was that there's no explanation as to why she's batshit crazy.
I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't say that.
Did they give you an idea of why she's the way she is at all?
It's not like she's batshit crazy. It's just she's the kind of character, and you kind of know people like this where she'll do something because she wants to see how people will react, and that's what she finds humorous. And there's a lot of shots of her, like something strange happens, or a character is doing something strange or unexpected, and then it goes to a shot of her character, like, and her eyes lighting up, like, oh my god, this is weird, and she thinks it's funny because it's weird. Like, she's that kind of character.
There's no explanation for her.
But that's the thing. Was there an explanation for Egon?
Yeah, well, actually, they got into it, especially in the second movie, where you find out that he was a kid genius, and he was very much isolated.
Right, but that was the second movie.
Right.
I'm just saying that I felt personally it didn't need that kind of...
But Egon was an archetype more than a character in the first movie.
I would say that, again, what do you mean by that?
He was the Nevish scientist,
right,
who really can't see anything else around him except what he's focusing on at the moment.
I can see what you're saying.
So he was really an archetype. But in the second movie, they made him more of a character. But he definitely was an archetype in the first movie.
But what was interesting about this to me was that the way that Holtzman was presented, that's Kate McKinnon's character, probably the only character name I actually remember. She was actually the most believable part of the movie to me because of that. Because of the way she was established from the beginning. The things that she said made sense to me that character would say it.
Right, but you have no idea why the character's like
that. You get a sense of that. I mean, you find out about her character. I mean, that she is an engineer. She's a genius scientist. But they never go into her childhood or anything. They go into the childhood of of what's the main actress's name?
Melissa McCarthy.
No, that one.
Kristen Wiig.
Kristen Wiig. Sorry, I love Kristen Wiig too, and I just playing. Chalk it up to the heat.
Who's got top billing? McCarthy has top billing.
Well, what's interesting about them too, that I wanted to bring that up, is if you ask me who the main character of the original Ghostbusters is, I say Venkman. You know, it's Bill Murray. I mean, obviously the other ones play in very well, but he's the main character. He's the first one you're introduced to, and he's the one that you're mostly following. If you ask me about this one, I would say that Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy are equally the main characters. That it really is both of them in this one, and they're kind of both the straight men. You know what I mean? Like where you have Kate McKinnon's character, who is just kind of strange and just kind of in her own world. And then you have Leslie Jones, who is the sort of outgoing, like, loud one. And then you have the two of them that they kind of are both the straight man, and they feed off of each other. But they have the least, they're the least amount of archetype. You know what I mean?
Well, what kind of comedy has two straight men?
I don't know. It was kind of. I don't know how much I like that or dislike that, but I found it to be interesting. But how I made sense of it is, again, that it was about their friendship with each other. That's what the movie's really about.
Which is what Paul Feig's thing is.
Right. And I actually enjoy that. Now, something else I wanted to point out is what's interesting to me and what is kind of heartwarming is I did have, there were children in the audience. And when I was walking in, there was a little girl saying, "Yay, we found Ghostbusters and we found the theater." And she was so excited. Mm-hmm. And that is one of the reasons. It might be silly, but that is one of the reasons why I did want to support this. Because it's working, that girls are excited about this. And I think that there does need to be more of that, whether it's Ghostbusters or not.
Well, as long as it's good.
But that's what I'm saying. I think it is good. I think this was mostly good. And the problems that I had with it were, again, I think more of a critique of modern comedies as opposed to the movie itself. And also something...
Well, how can you separate the two?
Because what I keep coming back to is, although I enjoyed this movie, the original Ghostbusters came out 32 years ago. The original Ghostbusters came out the year I was born, in 1984. And so I have to realize that, at least to a degree, that this movie is not completely for me. It is for a new audience of moviegoers. And something that I really did want to bring up again about sort of what warmed my heart about this movie is when they do go back into the past of Kristen Wiig's character. She talks about, she's asked, how did you get into finding ghosts or writing about ghosts and researching this? And she says that she was, that her mean neighbor, this mean woman that lived next door, died, and when she was a kid. And late at night, she saw the neighbor's ghost staring at her from the foot of her bed. And she said that happened every night for about a year. And nobody believed her except for Melissa McCarthy's character. And she said that she was teased and bullied in schools and being called the ghost girl. And so then once they all start getting more publicity, she even makes the note a couple of times, "Oh, now we're all the ghost girls. Nobody believes us." And I was sitting there thinking about that there is going to be that strange kid, whether a boy or a girl, watching this movie, and they're going to see themselves on the screen. They're going to relate to that, being the weird one. And I didn't realize this completely myself going into it, that is a part of what I think Ghostbusters is about, that it's a weird thing. It was a weird movie.
Yeah. Well, in the beginning, there were outsiders in the original movie.
Exactly. But they really focused in on that a bit more, and I really actually like that. And there's something to it that to me is the magic of cinema. When you're watching a movie and you see yourself on the screen. And I think that they did that very well. And that's why I think that this is mostly a good movie. But again, it's for a different audience.
But that's the thing. A classic movie is for an audience of any time.
But that what I'm saying is that I, as a person that grew up with Ghostbusters and still love both of the originals and loved the cartoon when I was a kid, I still mostly enjoyed this. And the parts that I didn't enjoy, again, I think that I've realized that that's the part that is more targeted to an audience that I'm not a part of. But it was a very small part to me, and I would like to see this franchise continue. I'm interested to see what happens.
I don't. Kill it.
Why? I mean,
kill it because, like I said, the whole thing was flawed from the beginning. Why was there anything in the story that prevented this from being just a sequel or a reboot?
I do think so. I was actually thinking about that coming back here. I'm sure there would have been ways to work around this, but that story that I just told you about her as a little girl, nobody believing her as a kid, teenager, rather, and then again, them kind of starting up, and people not believing them, or what actually happens midway through the movie is that the mayor takes them in and says, hey, we want you to keep doing this, but we're sorry, we're going to have to say that you're a fraud. But keep doing it anyway. Those things couldn't have happened, or it would have been harder to figure out how to have that be a theme in the movie, and it ends up being the primary theme of the movie.
It's called writing.
Right. I think that could have been
it's like what George R. R. Martin did in Game of Thrones, where when we first encounter Game of Thrones, magic doesn't exist anymore. It hasn't existed in generations.
Yeah.
So people don't believe in it anymore. You know what I mean? So, I mean...
But would that have been as convincing? You know, I mean, even in Game of Thrones, they don't believe it anymore because it happened hundreds or thousands of years ago.
I know, but...
This would have happened 30 years ago.
Yeah, but there's no YouTube back then. So...
Yeah, but...
You know...
It was a major event in New York City.
Right, but, you know, it's like one of those things that when there's less record of it, things get forgotten. I just don't think that would have been... They still could have done the whole thing where nobody would believe her.
Why wouldn't they have believed her, though? You know, that's what I'm saying.
Because nobody believes kids anyway, and that's part of every kid's story that says something and they're not believed.
Again, I think it could have been... They could have worked around it, but I could see why maybe they didn't bother with that as much.
Yeah, but that's a huge thing. For that one element to
but
sort
that,
of...
again, that ends up being the theme of the movie.
Yeah, no. Yeah, there's no way. It easily could have been a sequel.
Now, something else that I think we should comment on is that I should have looked it up. I think it was Paul Feig himself that said this, or it might have been one of the producers, that there is an after credit scene where basically Leslie Jones's character is listening to a recording of something, and then she goes, "Wait, what is that?" And then they say, "What's going on?" And she says, "What is Zool?"
Right.
And so I think it was Paul Feig himself that said the reason why that was there is he wanted to show that there could be things from the original series, more things from the original series that would come into this new series. And
just make a sequel.
But that's the thing. I was actually thinking...
Or a requel, a reboot sequel.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. That it might be a little bit of a stretch, but I think audiences these days more understand the idea of alternate universes than ever before. Especially with, like, multiple Marvel characters going on and, like, Star Trek itself, that requel. That they could, if they wanted to, have an interdimensional thing go on. They could, and I don't think it would be that strange. I think they could still do it if they wanted to, and maybe they are, because it sounds like that they really, after that backlash, they really don't want to completely say that it's out of the question.
They may have to at this point.
Right, but I think they could. I think it would work.
They may have to because let's see how much money it makes this weekend. Because, like I said, they started off badly. They lost another movie, in its second week.
Right.
They're not getting released in China. And, they're going to have to compete with Star Trek, which is probably going to take the top spot. So a movie that never made it to the top spot is going to have trouble getting its sequel made. Even if it's greenlighted, it doesn't matter. Plenty of movies are greenlighted, and then they're killed in production. So it's going to have to make money. Or if it doesn't make money, they're just not going to do it.
What this ties into is the cameos, which I actually thought were tastefully done. That they were done in a way that kids that might not have seen the original movies would still accept these characters. It wasn't like these characters were just there to have the cameo. So I thought that was good.
What do you mean? There were other characters? What were they?
They were characters. Bill Murray, he's first seen in an interview on the news because he is a ghost debunker. And then he actually comes to, their HQ to, inspect the ghost. And so he's essentially kind of the Peck character. Mm-hmm. And he only has 2 scenes, but it makes sense even if it wasn't Bill Murray. So I like that.
Why was he in this movie? Bill Murray, you should have read the script. You should have been in the sequel before Harold Ramis died. This is all your fault.
What we should
I blame you.
What we should do at some point is a Let's Play of the Ghostbusters video game that came out a few years ago.
Which is ostensibly the sequel.
Yeah, and even Harold Ramis and Bill Murray and everybody did voiceovers and had their likeness for that and wrote the script.
Right.
So that's something I'm very guilty feeling that I never beat. So we should go back and do that. But then you had what's the secretary's name?
Thor, Chris Hemsworth.
No. In the original.
Oh, Annie Potts.
Annie Potts. She was. She worked at the hotel as a receptionist. So she was there. Then you have Dan Aykroyd as a cab driver. And the guy, I was actually surprised. The guy that got the biggest response from the audience I was with was Ernie Hudson. And his cameo is at the end of the movie, and everyone in the audience actually started clapping and cheered for him. Which is interesting because of knowing a little bit of the history of his role in the original films and how he felt very shortchanged, or he used to. Now he seems to have gotten over it.
Yeah, because he's beloved. He makes all these conventions appearances.
But he got the biggest response.
He's a beloved character.
He got the biggest response. And the other thing that the audience cheered for was Slimer. And I gotta say that Slimer's appearance in this movie was great. He has 2 scenes in it, and it was really well done. And, I was really laughing hard. And what was great to me, too, is that the small child in the back of me, when he came on screen, said, "Hey, it's Slimer," which shows that parents are showing their kids these original movies still to this day. And kids still know who Slimer is.
The original is what they should be watching, not this junk.
You don't know that it's junk. You didn't see it. Which I would want you to see it at some point, just because I would be interested
I'll see it so I can hate on it fully.
Okay.
Right? Because I want to know. What really made me despise everything was the trailers.
Right. Now, that was the thing. Probably speaking for you, sorry. But what you said about the trailers was you didn't like the sight gags, right? The physical slapstick physical comedy. And what happened was actually what I suspected, that all of the sight gags and slapstick that were in the trailers, those were the only scenes like that in the movie. So you've already, that was it. It wasn't like the whole movie was like that. It was only those small moments. And again,
I don't know if that makes it better.
It did. It did take me out of the movie a little bit. Like I said, about, again, my critique about modern comedy. But it anytime it happened, they pulled me right back in, right after it.
All right, now in one of the trailers, somebody does a crazy flip. Who the hell is that?
A flip?
Yeah, with their thing.
It might have. Wait. Well, there's a scene where Melissa McCarthy's character was trying out their new.
No, they were fighting a ghost. This is in the trailer.
Oh.
And then all of a sudden, she does this crazy like kung fu flip.
Well, Kate McKinnon's character Holtzman, she has like a scene where it's been in the big fight in Times Square, and where she's going all out and firing off these new weapons that she made, and it was actually really. It was really cool, actually. But that's it. It was just that one
but
scene.
when you see it in the trailer, it's an unreal sort of flip.
I didn't pick up on a flip. Maybe that was cut out, or I just didn't.
Because it looked terrible.
I don't know.
I mean, it just looked awful, and it was an inhuman sort of action.
I didn't pick up anything.
It was like a superhero.
I didn't pick up on anything like
that.
It's
in one of the trailers.
You'd have to show me afterwards.
Yeah, it's one of the trailers.
It didn't. If it was there, it didn't register for me. The other thing again is the special effects. I have to agree with what everyone's saying that this wasn't very good CG. Mm-hmm. That especially in that Times Square scene, you could so obviously tell that there is a green screen behind them. Mm-hmm. But again, the actors themselves are so convincing, and the characters are so likable that I felt it was excusable. But I would like them to do much. I would hope that they would do more practical effects than they did in this movie, just because it was obvious. Like, it almost looked like sci-fi movie bad. You know what I mean? Like Sci-Fi Channel movie bad.
Sharknado?
Yeah, kind of. Like, especially one scene towards the end where, again, this is what pulls together the theme of the movie for me, is Melissa McCarthy's character, Abby, that was the character's name, gets pulled into this vortex. And sorry, guys, it looks like that my computer cut out, so we're going to continue talking. So, I'm hoping that we got the part where I was saying that she jumps into the vortex, and just the way that she was falling, it just looked ridiculous, because you could just tell that she was probably on a wire like this, right. And then there was a green screen. But again, it was not anything that really ruined the movie to me. It was just something that took me out of it a little bit. And another thing that I wanted to say that I thought was kind of funny, again, seeing this movie in New York, is walking out of the theater, I was walking behind a couple who was talking, and the woman said, you
eavesdrop a lot.
Oh, yeah, of course. But especially, I'm curious. I'm curious to see what audiences think about things. And I heard her say that my one critique for this movie was that a real New Yorker wouldn't eat Papa John's pizza. Because there's one part where they're actually eating Papa John's. You can see it on the box.
Well, are they real New Yorkers?
What?
In the movie, are the characters real New Yorkers?
Yeah, they're all from New York.
Are they supposed to be from New York?
Yeah. Now, something else that ties into the original is towards maybe the midway, maybe a little earlier than that, when they're looking for a headquarters, the first place that they go to is the firehouse. Ugh. And they're all excited about it, and then the real estate agent tells them how much it would cost, and they say, no, we can't afford that. So they move on top of the Chinese food restaurant. However, after the big Times Square incident, and everybody's behind them and everything, the mayor's assistant comes over and thanks them for anything, and she says, "We want you to continue your research. However," and she said, "We'll give you anything that you need." And she goes, "Anything?" And she goes, "Yes." And they end up purchasing the firehouse, and that's their new headquarters. So if there is a sequel, they will be at the firehouse.
Which might explain the interdimensional portal.
Maybe.
Because it would be from Ghostbusters headquarters to Ghostbusters headquarters.
That would be interesting. I'd be on for that. I don't know. But they do end up at the firehouse.
Which is at least in New York City, not Boston.
Right.
Where the Chinese restaurant is.
And we did have external shots of NYC. Again, seeing this in Astoria was funny at one point. The first ghost that they try to catch that's in the subway, they don't quite get it, and it ends up going into a train. And then Leslie Jones' character says, "Well, I guess he's on his way to Queens." And everyone started cheering, and she said, "The ghost is probably not the weirdest thing on there." So that registered well here in Astoria, so that was cool.
Yeah, but I just hate the fact that any of it was filmed in Boston. And it was just to save some money. That's all it was for.
Yeah, I get that.
For the tax breaks. And like I said, there's the drabness of everything. The Ecto-1 looks boring to me. Their equipment looks boring to me. And they don't look like exterminators like they did in the first movie. Now they look like sanitation workers.
Now what was interesting to me too is that the characters themselves comment on that. Where there's a couple of digs that they have on their own uniforms. Where she says, "I know I don't look very professional," and one of the other characters says, "Yeah, you look like that. You should be on the back of a garbage truck." And so they're aware of that.
But why do that?
I'm not sure. Again, like that. Those were some things that I think were meant for laughs, but it wasn't. It wasn't funny because it was meant for laughs. You know what I mean? But again, they were few and far between, in my opinion. All in all, if I were to rate this, I give it like maybe an 8.5 out of 10. I really like the movie. And there are critiques that I have about it, again, I think are not so much at fault of the movie, but that the parts that I feel might not have been for my generation of moviegoer.
Well, that's a problem, because classic movies resonate across all generations.
But it did still resonate with me.
Did it?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I would see it again.
You know, like if you show a kid the original Ghostbusters, they're going to like the whole thing.
Not necessarily.
What are they not going to like?
That
they don't have cell phones?
No, that there are even people, guys and girls younger than me, just by 5 years, that never saw Ghostbusters.
That never saw it is different.
And that see it now, and they don't like it. That there are some things that don't play as well.
Right, but
for
there's
example,
a lot of hype.
But also, for example, Venkman's character would come off as a complete chauvinist asshole.
But he was back then, too.
Yeah, but it was more. There were certain things more acceptable then. For example, a ghost giving Dan Aykroyd a blowjob, or being insinuated.
What, that couldn't happen now?
It wouldn't be in a PG-13 movie today. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't be as well accepted. That's what I'm saying. There's certain things that wouldn't play as well to a young audience.
Snowflakes, raising snowflakes.
Not necessarily. It's just another generation.
Snowflakes.
What does that mean? What do you mean by
the
that?
Precious snowflakes that you have to handle so carefully.
Well, it's just that the sexual objectification of women isn't as much accepted now.
Well, no, but
for me, as someone that saw it,
right. But the thing was that you didn't. That's what you didn't like about Venkman.
But it wasn't just Venkman. That's what I'm saying.
Who?
Dan Aykroyd getting a blowjob from an attractive ghost. Like that's a little strange for modern audiences. Where for me, I accept it as knowing, that was the 80s. You know what I mean? Yeah,
but there were movies that addressed sex with ghosts before and after.
So I'm saying that there's certain elements of the original Ghostbusters that wouldn't necessarily play well today.
Right.
And just like I think that there's elements of this movie that don't play as well with someone that's a product of the 80s and 90s.
Right.
But both I really enjoy, and I would even see it again when it comes out on video or something.
All right. Well, like I said, you haven't convinced me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that could convince you at this point?
Not really, because I know too much about it, and nothing about it. And again, nothing about it took me or interested me. Now, I don't hate this movie as much as I hate Batman versus Superman, say.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, but everything still that I've seen and everything you keep telling me does not endear the movie to me whatsoever.
Now, if it was connected to the original, would you have gone to see it?
That would have helped, but there's other problems with the movie.
Elaborate.
Well, like everything I saw in the trailer. Again, the slapstick comedy that you say is not such a big part of it,
Right.
but it's in it at all, and that's pretty bad. The uniforms and the equipment and the whole look of the things, and like I said, the characters. You're okay with no explanation as to why McKinnon is the way that she is, Holtzman is the way she is.
But there's nothing about her character that would require an explanation.
Okay. All right. Although you said that she's really sort of a goofball.
Yeah, but kind of, she's almost like a mixture between Egon and Venkman, where she's an outsider like Egon and kind of strange because you get the impression she's the genius.
Right.
But she's also the one that will do things and say things to get a reaction out of people, just like me.
Yeah, but what makes somebody like that?
What makes anybody like
I
anybody?
mean, you knew Venkman was kind of a con artist from the beginning. Now, he didn't believe in everything.
Right, but it's not. She's a believable character. In fact, to me, she was the most believable character because she was the one that was constantly in character, whereas as opposed to Kristen Wiig and Melissa McCarthy, who were supposed to be the straight men, quote unquote, suddenly would have a strange conversation about, like, for example, the mayor says, somebody says, well, the cat's out of the bag about ghosts. And so they have like a minute back and forth of being like, well, I think they're saying that they want to put us to put the cat back in the bag. Well, you can't put the cat back in the bag. And it was just like this weird conversation that from what these characters were established as, they wouldn't be talking like that because it just doesn't make sense. But again, maybe that's just the kind of comedy that's more appealing these days. Again, those are the things that...
It's not for me. That's not for me.
Okay.
So, that's in boycott list, scratch off number 2 for me. Ghostbusters. Which
God,
should have had a whole name. Not Ghostbusters. Should have called something else. So next is a Star Trek Beyond.
Yeah.
Which I'm going to boycott also. All right. I think that's my 3 big boycotts this year.
3 big boycotts.
But, you know, I'm not the only one that feels this way because of the box office.
Yeah.
So everybody says, I'll have to see it for myself. Again, you're part of the problem. You're part of the problem. That's why we keep getting junk.
I don't know. I really liked it. I don't know if I would say yet that I love it because you can only really know that in time, maybe. But I thought it was a really well done movie with a few things that I didn't like. And I would see it again. I hope that there's a sequel. And at the very least, even if it's shitty movie, I'm happy that little girls get some heroes to identify with.
I think the little girls deserve better movies.
Again, I would like to see what you think of it after you had seen it because
And like I said,
it's a really good movie.
I'm boycotting it. But when I finally do sit down to watch it,
Yeah.
all right, I'm gonna just look at it very critically.
Right. That's
Right.
what I would want you to do.
I'm not gonna hate on it. I'm gonna watch it critically.
Exactly.
Even though I want to hate on it, I'll watch it critically, and I'll say whether I was right or wrong at that point.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I doubt it because I'm almost never wrong. So, what?
You may be right, but I may be crazy, but it might just be a lunatic you're looking for.
All right, so here we go. John gave it an 8.0.
8.5, I would say.
Oh, 8.5.
You can't give it anything.
Well, I can give it a 10 on the hate meter right now. The hate it without having seen it meter. I give it a 10.
Look how much sweatier I got progressively through this conversation. It's
Yes.
pretty gross. Anyway, this is NYC Geek Society signing off. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your friends. Tell your mom. Tell Victor's mom.
No, don't tell any moms. Their moms don't care.
All right, everybody. Go see Ghostbusters.
Don't.